Welcome to the Real Comic Heroes Podcast. Your adventure into the world of comic book movies starts here.
Greetings, citizens, and welcome to another adventure of the Real Comic Heroes Podcast. My name's Travis, and Patrick is away on assignment. He said something about going out to the Egyptian desert to search for a supreme being. I don't know. We'll have more when he returns. But I am joined by two special guests.
Hi, I'm Alyson Grimm. I don't have any projects of my own to plug today, but I do have a television recommendation. You should watch the show Severance on Apple TV+.
Nice.
Allow myself to introduce myself. I'm James B. I'm one of the two hosts of the Let's Read Spider-Man podcast, which Travis has just recently appeared on episode 72. So if you're interested in reading Spider-Man, check that out. If not, you can just ignore me completely.
Well, welcome to the show, Alyson, James. And we should have some fun talking about Austin Powers, International Man of Mystery today. Let's just kick things off right at the start here. And why don't you guys tell me about your history with Austin Powers? Whoever wants to go first.
Okay. So Austin Powers comes out when I'm about, actually, I know it comes out in May of 97. So I'm going to be turning 27 soon in the story. So I am I'm a newlywed. I'm a homeowner. And I hear about this movie that's in theaters that's supposed to be super funny, and I have no idea what it is at all. So I go into the movie just because people are telling me to see this movie, not because I'm aware of any previews. And Travis, when you reached out to me after we've done some podcasts together, and you said, "Hey, I'd love you to be on the show sometime. Pick a movie." The reason I picked this movie is because it's the only movie that I ever was in the theater and actually fell out of my theater chair laughing. I was laughing so hard. This movie for me it's a very special movie, and you'll find me quoting it. I quote it all the time in life, and it'll be very difficult for me to not be quoting it while we're doing this podcast.
Yeah.
I was 11 when Austin Powers came out, so I really liked it, but a lot of the jokes went over my head at the time, and I always knew it in the back of my mind, like as a fond memory, like I would reference it, but I hadn't watched it for a really long time. And my husband and I actually rewatched it right before COVID, and I was really surprised at how well it held up, and just how many of the jokes I didn't understand when I was younger, and just how funny it was. I was genuinely, like you said, like lots of laugh out loud moments, like surprisingly funny.
Right on. I was 14 when this came out, and I went to it without any prior knowledge of what this was. I would have known who Mike Myers was from Wayne's World, and it was weird because I think it's the first movie I ever saw by myself. My mom had taken me to the mall, dropped me off, let me be by myself in the mall for like 4 hours. So I just remember going to see this movie without knowing anything about it and just confused by a lot of it, but very entertained, obviously, by the jokes and the humor. And it's one that I've rewatched then over the years a few times, and I've always found it to hold up almost every time I've rewatched it. And so it's been several years since I've watched it, but now I've watched it twice for preparing for this, and I laughed several times, both times.
Well, I want to let you guys know that I'll be here for you to help you with the jokes, to understand it. I know that some of the things not make sense to you, but I will assure you I will teach you what your parents didn't teach you and why things are funny. Okay.
Can you tell me why the Italian woman's name is funny?
There's there's an alternate ending. There's two alternate endings to this movie, and in one of them they go character by character and they talk about like where they are today. And she changed her first name from a lot of vagina to Sandy Vagina in the alternate ending.
Okay.
So I'll explain that when we get to that scene.
So she's Anakin Skywalker's nemesis.
She gets everywhere.
And she was a very coarse character.
She's like the village bicycle. Everyone's had a ride, baby. Yeah. I warned you.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I mean the opening of the movie, it's not that different from some of the early Bond films that we've covered on this show, from
Mhm.
Russia with Love, Goldfinger. I actually wrote Goldmember in my notes and I'll cross that out. You Only Live Twice. This movie borrows a lot from You Only Live Twice. That'll come up throughout the our discussion, I bet. But yeah, opening up with Doctor Evil's lair and him dispatching some of his henchmen who have failed him. That's a reference. I want to say the start of Goldfinger. I think that's where Blofeld is kind of going around the room and executes a couple of his people. I mean, it's a very similar scene. So
I find this movie very top heavy. When I was taking notes on what to talk
mm,
about today, I found 80% of what I wanted to discuss is in the first 45 minutes of the movie. So I
yeah.
apologize if I come on a little quick with some things right off the get go. But you mentioned Blofeld. Could you explain to the listeners why you brought up Blofeld? Because it's going to lead to something I want to discuss.
Okay. Yeah, Blofeld is a villain, one of the early main villains from the James Bond series. He was played by a few different actors, and this version of Doctor Evil, or I guess Doctor Evil, is mostly based visually off of Donald Pleasance's Blofeld from You Only Live
Yeah, and
Twice.
if you look at the image of them, they're, it looks like it's the same person essentially.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
what happened that's important to know, and many of our listeners, could know this, uh, that when he created the character, he did use the image of Blofeld, but he used a lot of mannerisms of
yeah,
Lorne Michaels, the Saturday Night Live, I'm sure creator, producer.
yeah.
Specifically, Dana Carvey's impression of Lorne
Correct,
Michaels.
Allison.
Right.
I'm glad. Do you want to fill in a little bit more here? What you heard or what I know as well?
Um, well, what I heard is that Mike Myers and Dana Carvey had like a really long falling out over that
Absolutely,
because
absolutely.
Mike basically stole his impression, and why not just cast Dana Carvey in your
Yeah.
movie?
Right, and he could, the pinky finger, it came right from the Dana Carvey impression, because Lauren doesn't even do that. And today, by the way, they are fine. Doing a little bit of my research for this movie, I saw that around 2019, Carvey decided to kind of back down a little bit, and it seems like they're great friends today. They have a lot in common. But Dana Carvey was never even considered for this role. They did consider another actor though to play Dr. Evil, and that was Jim Carrey.
Hmm.
Jim Carrey was asked to do the role, but he declined because he wanted to do Liar Liar instead.
Huh.
I
Man,
don't know if Jim Carrey would work as Doctor Evil. I
yeah.
don't know.
It's funny, like watching the movie, it doesn't even seem like Mike Myers is playing Dr. Evil. Dr. Evil comes
Mhm.
across as his own
His own thing.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you can see Mike Myers as Austin Powers,
Mhm.
it's obviously him, but he disappears, I think, in the Dr. Evil character. And I mean,
Mhm.
he looks so much different. He's got the shaved head. I think he actually shaved his head in this. I don't think he's wearing a bald cap.
Hmm.
But there's the prosthetic, the scar, the fake nose that he's
But
got.
just
It's
the
just
way he carries himself too, like the
yeah,
way he holds his body is completely different.
yeah. They just completely seem like different
Mhm.
actors, across both
Yeah,
characters, I
I
guess.
felt the same way, and I was watching, and I watched it last week, and then I watched it this week. But I watched it last week with my son, and I said to him, "You wouldn't even know this is the same person because they're like you said, the
Yeah.
Mhm.
mannerisms." So, excellent point to bring up.
I like we first see Austin, it's like this little fun dance number and it kind of sets you up, kind of know what you're getting into a little bit. It's going to be lighthearted. For me, like I think it puts you in a good mood.
It's so fun. Like
Yeah.
when we rewatched it yesterday, I said like I feel like one of the fictional worlds I would most like to visit is specifically Austin Powers' vision of
Mm,
London in the 1960s.
yeah.
I've never been a big fan actually of the whole soul bossa nova dance sequence. There's a few parts of this movie that maybe because it's not funny to me. The only thing I
Mhm.
noticed though that there's one scene that he's on the magazine cover that he's holding up himself. I
Yeah.
thought he's
Yeah.
that famous.
Sure.
Yeah, there's so much great physical comedy in that scene. I mean, in the entire movie with Austin Powers, but that scene is so well done. I think.
And I think it's obviously visually it's borrowing from like the Beatles in
Hmm.
Help and And James Bond is a famous enough character. He's a terrible spy. Everyone
Mhm.
knows who
Yeah.
James Bond is. And they obviously they play that up here. He's a celebrity. I don't know enough about like the In Like Flynn, the James Coburn spy movies that I know that this is also borrowing from. So I don't know if that comes from that kind of uh I know like the outfit he's wearing some of the times is a little bit borrowed from that. So I don't know enough about that film series to know what doesn't come from James Bond and does come from that series. So
In my research at one point, I was looking at like why did he cast certain people and why did he, and I don't remember anything besides Bond in that era. I do know that his connections to Bond extend for the fact that I believe he gave out some kind of achievement award for either the Bond movies or to Sean Connery. And I know Daniel
mm,
Craig made a famous reference in around 2014 that because of Austin Powers, the Bond movies can't even have any kind of jokes in them anymore because he's kind of ruined
yeah,
them. So now they have to be a little more
yeah,
serious. So
that's really
um,
true.
when that Boston Over scene ends, they have them in the car and they're talking to Basil
Mm,
Expedition, who's giving him the mission because the first, the beginning scene with Doctor Evil explains to us like his goals and who the villains are and who Austin Powers is. And then between that and Basil, they've sort of set up what you need to know for the background of the 60s. But they purposely have the background scenes being so awful that they're putting like no effort at all into making the background look realistic.
oh
I kind
sure.
of
Yeah, because they're not gonna spend that much time there.
right, but I think they, it's one of those moments where like I think they're trying to say like, look how cheesy we're going to be purposely here. So
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah.
and especially when they go to the electric psychedelic Pussycat Swingers Club,
Yeah.
and the whole bit with him punching out the waitress, and it reveals that it's really a man. You know, just the way that they do that, where it's clearly a woman, and then he
And then
punches her.
when you
You
see
know,
lays down, it's clearly a man, yet clearly a
yeah,
different person.
yeah, that kind of lets you know what movie you're in for.
Mhm.
And and even that's kind of a callback to Thunderball, the James Bond movie Thunderball, where they he goes to a funeral, and there's a lady, with the kind of the black veil that James Bond just attacks because it's a man. Uh,
Mhm.
it's someone pretending to be, a grieving widow or something. And yeah, it perfectly gives you the kind of lets you know what vibe you're going for. It's not going to take itself too seriously, and there are going to be visual jokes like that where it's unmistakably, a hard cut, basically.
Yeah. And it sets up the callback later so perfectly
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Great callback to
oh,
that joke.
absolutely. As we review your movie here, it's interesting because it's a comedy, and that's what I'm living for. And at the same time, I know you have the Bond connection. But if I,
Mhm.
Mhm.
Allison, on my podcast, I do a little bit of like interpreting the storyline of the Spider-Man book. So occasionally, I feel like I'll throw in a little bit of that here. And one thing I thought was interesting that Doctor Evil kills the assassin instead of
Mhm.
Austin Powers. Now, after they do the "It's no woman, it's a man," and where is Dr. Evil? Dr. Evil kills the assassin, then makes a run for it. So he
Mhm.
could have left his assassin alive. And I thought, he could have just shot Austin Powers, which is going to come up later. Why don't you just do this?
Yeah.
However,
That's his whole thing as a villain. Like it's about the spectacle and the
right,
theatrics of
right.
good
Yeah.
and evil. It's very Venture Brothers in terms of the way it handles being a
Well,
supervillain.
he did earlier just kill 4 of his 6 associates because they failed, those assassins failed to help him rid the world of Austin Powers. So if you mess up, he takes you out. So at least they're consistent within
Yeah.
their little story.
Yeah, the Dr. Evil gets away. He goes into his cryo freezing chamber.
And you actually don't see Doctor Evil
No, yeah.
for the first bit because apparently, like, it wasn't advertised that Mike Myers was also playing that role. Apparently, is
Oh,
that true?
really? I don't know. Yeah,
I don't know. My husband told me yesterday. I don't remember that much from like the promotions leading up to
Hmm.
the movie. But I mean, you don't see him like you see Mr. Bigglesworth and you
yeah.
see his silhouette in the chair, and then you kind of see him like running up the stairs, kind of hunched over from behind, but you don't
Mhm.
actually see him until a little bit later on.
I need to re-look at the trailer to see if they show Dr.
Uh,
Evil or
and I didn't rewatch the trailer. It was the one thing I chose. Who needs to rewatch a trailer?
yeah.
But
I could be completely wrong.
No,
I don't know.
No, you might be right.
But I
and
mean,
that,
you don't see
correct.
his face.
He has not been revealed at all, and they purposely
Yeah.
are masking it with smoke right
and-
now.
yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's funny, we get the it says like 30 years later, which I started to do the math, and we're only 5 years away from 2027, which would be 30 years from
I
when
would
this
love if
movie
they would
came
make
out.
another Austin Powers about him like having
Yeah.
been frozen since '97. Now he
It's
has to
Next
navigate.
month is the 25th anniversary of the movie.
Oh, is
Yeah.
it?
So it's just so weird that this 1967 was only 30, that you don't
Mhm.
think about how that initially it seems like such a huge gap, but now it
Mhm.
seems like nothing.
Yeah, we're just getting old.
Yeah, that's all purely. The call between like this radar technician and Commander Gilmore, I rewatching it, I thought there were going to be more of the running gag jokes that we get in the second one. The whole, oh, it looks like, basically it looks like a big dick,
Mhm.
that sort of thing. So I was surprised at how subtle this is. It's
Mhm.
just, there's a big boy,
That's why I feel like the first one works better than the second one. I
Mhm.
don't love the second one,
Okay.
but I think the first one is great. But
Yeah.
because of that, like it's still very raunchy, but it's more subtle.
Sure.
Yeah, there's not as many of those references, except for a couple from Austin, but that's within his character.
Yeah.
Like when he sees
Yeah,
the Vulcan missile later, he makes like a one-off in the middle of it, and she
Yeah.
shrugs him aside.
And of course, the visual gags with like the sausage and the balloon when they're
Sure.
in the honeymoon suite.
There were a few things that in this that that I was surprised, either were or weren't in the second movie. I thought the whole group therapy thing with Carrie Fisher later, I thought
Mhm.
that entire setup was all in the second movie. I did not realize before going into it that started in this movie. So just little things like
He
that.
had them liquidated because they're insolent,
Yeah.
Yes.
so they're not available anymore.
I like during this, that obviously they realize that they have to unthaw Austin Powers, and then Basil Exposition tells us that he volunteered himself for cryogenic freezing in case Dr. Evil ever showed up, and then during that thawing sequence, it's wild that there's a sequence there where Mike Myers like completely had himself submerged in this red liquid goo,
Mhm.
and he's completely covered. And that's, I think it's him. I mean, there's kind of showing him like side profile when his whole body is covered, but that's,
And just the way he looks and acts in that scene is so funny because he's like a baby bird. He's so confused and has no idea what's going on and like reacclimating to his body.
that's,
I was
go
going to say, there are some scenes that didn't make the. I was telling Travis before that there's an international version, which has about 5 minutes of footage, and most of it that's been cut. I think it's better the American version. I'll take a risk and say that. I think that they kind of break up the movie and slow it down. But one thing that was interesting here that they removed is when they walk in and they see other people that are frozen. They have Gary Coleman, and they have
Yeah,
Vanilla Ice. They actually had Evel Knievel in the international version, and they have an empty spot reserved for John Travolta. But this whole sequence was the first sequence I found super funny. There's a section, of course, where he's being, I can't remember the word they use. He's peeing basically. And evacuation. Thank you so much. It goes on for, yes, I had my stopwatch going. 27 seconds is the first run, and then 11 more on the second one.
Nice.
But the thing that probably was the funniest to me, because I have my little notes here of like top 10 lines of all for this movie, is when he sees that, we talked about 25 years ago, 30 years ago, that there's a Russian general there with him. And I don't have the name written down for that character, but he thinks the Russians have won the war, and he says,
Finally, those capitalist pigs.
Finally, those capitalist pigs will pay for their crimes. And then
hey, comrades.
he's like, Austin, we won the war. He's like, groovy, smashing. He looks at him, go on you, yay, capitalism. I'm like, that was just so funny to me that he's able to do that, and I thought that was great. And then even the reference to inner monologue, that you have no inner
Mhm.
monologue. I think that could be used in other movies too, because if you talk about somebody having no inner monologue, it helps the audience understand what they're thinking at the time, which is always difficult
Mhm.
when there's a character by themselves. A lot of movies should be this like you've taken this pill and you lose your inner monologue, and the person has to kind of
Yeah.
exposition.
You say it
Yeah,
out
say it
loud.
all. That would be a clever thing there. So, but this is the start of when I start to laugh like, and I get in a lot of trouble here. So.
Mhm.
What always gets me, and it sounds like Allison, maybe the same thing that got you is when it's that half dazed, like stumbling around, and
Mhm.
the technicians are like trying to wrangle him
Trying to
and get
guide
him into
him. Yeah.
position. That works on me
Me too.
so much. I just love that
I
stuff.
just genuinely like Mike Myers. I think he's
Yeah,
hilarious.
and it's he's interesting because this character's nothing like Wayne,
Mhm.
Wayne Campbell. I mean, a
Mhm.
little bit in the flirtiness with
Yeah.
Vanessa. There's a little things that kind of carry over, but
Do we
yeah, he
do we
doesn't.
want to talk about
Maybe
the
he doesn't.
origin of Austin Powers, like where the character comes from?
Oh yeah. I just discovered this today. So
I did not know
Well,
this.
Travis,
yeah,
why don't
go
you take the lead, Travis, and I'll fill in anything I think you missed. How's that?
sure. In the little interstitials where we see this band, the Ming
Hmm.
T,
Yeah,
when
yeah.
he's playing, just interstitials. Apparently, that's Mike Myers' band that he established with Susanna Hoff from the Bangles. She's on the
Hmm.
guitar. Matthew Sweet, who I know his probably most famous for the song "Girlfriend." And then there's two others. I'm not they didn't write down their names. But yeah, he formed this band and called Ming T and just came up with the idea of we'll form this band, we'll make fake characters all in this like this faux mod 60s British pop kind of thing. And that's
Mhm.
where the character of Austin Powers came from. I think his wife said, "You should write a movie for this character." So
Yeah.
Yep,
that's
nailed it.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
the
purely just read that off of
uh,
Wikipedia earlier
Susanna
today. So,
Hoffs, the the Bangles singer, or her husband is the director of all three films as well.
mm,
Oh,
Hmm.
really?
Yep,
right.
yep. Yeah, apparently the only other thing I would add is that he was when he created the character, he thought of it initially driving home one day listening to like the Look of Love song, and he started daydreaming out like what it would be like if a swinger was existing in today's day and age. And he went home and he told his wife like, "Hey baby, we should go shag." And he said it was good for a couple days, and after the third day she said enough's enough. Why don't you just go ahead and make a skit out of this yourself, or make a band, or do something else, because I'm done
Yeah.
with you. So
I wonder if I could get that to work on my husband for his characters. Make a movie.
Yeah.
well, you talked about running gags and stuff, and a
Mm.
lot of this movie was improvised. And I went out and tried to find like a script on it, and I could see sections of the script that were like different. I thought, oh, maybe this was because they improvised it. But one section that's pretty accurate is when he goes to pick up his personal effects. Of course, we're not talking about Austin Powers. We're talking about Danger Powers' personal effects.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I thought this was excellent. I don't know how many times I've tried to figure out a way that I could be able to say, no, 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 Danger's my middle name, but I haven't been able to work that
Mhm.
into any kind of conversation on my own. Um,
Clearly, you just need a Swedish-made penis pump.
Yeah.
You claim is not your own.
the only thing that had changed from the script I saw was the medallion was initially a gold piece medallion as opposed to a silver
Mm.
medallion with male symbol. But I think everything here works
Yeah.
wonderfully. Um,
Oh yeah.
getting building and building. And this is like a Saturday Night Live skit where it just builds on itself, and you think
Oh
like,
yeah.
okay, when's this joke going to end? But this joke is perfect, and the fact that the Swedish made penis enlarger comes back twice more in the movie with relevance
Yeah.
is excellent. More callbacks.
I
I
love that
swear
there's
it's
a
not
giant
mine.
Swedish flag on it. Like that's so
Yeah.
unnecessary, and it cracks me up every time I see it.
Yeah. We also meet Ms. Kensington here, and I realized watching this, I don't know Liz Hurley from anything else. I may have seen Bedazzled, the movie that she did, where
Yeah,
I think she plays the
great
devil
movie.
with Brendan
Brendan
Brandon
Yep,
Fraser,
Fraser.
right?
yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I may have seen that one. Maybe a couple TV appearances of hers, but I look through her list, and yeah, it's weird. Like for a person that I'm very familiar with. I mean, visually, I guess, but yeah, I realized that I don't think I've ever really seen her in much else.
I can't think of anything else I've seen her in besides the Brendan Fraser movie.
Yeah,
Now that I'm thinking about it.
she's listed as being in Passenger 57, which I know I saw as a kid, but
Hmm.
I couldn't say anything about her character in that. But
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I immediately, you say Liz Hurley, I say Bedazzled. Actually, then I think, oh yeah, and she's in Austin Powers, and then I think, I
okay,
don't know, she probably went out with somebody, or she was probably on, some magazine's top, 50 beautiful people for the week or something like that. But I know who she is, and
yeah,
she probably dated somebody. And somebody's right now is listening to this podcast, going, it was, Jim Carrey. It was Jim Carrey or somebody like that. I don't know who it was. That
right,
was,
I'm sure she was all over like entertainment magazines
yeah.
and stuff in the late 90s.
So you get your first Ming T appearance
yeah,
after this sequence here. And I was trying to figure out which one Susanna Hoffs was. I was like kind of slowing the frames down, waiting, and then I paused it, and I'm like, oh, and they all jump in line. And she is the brunette with the guitar. So if you're watching the movie,
yeah.
Okay.
that's the bangle. So there she is.
And then we finally get to meet Dr. Evil, and we talked about him a little bit already, but he is, I think, the standout character, and
Mhm.
after this movie they definitely knew what they had, because you get so much more Dr. Evil in the
Mhm.
second one. They keep running with that character, but um like I said, it just he's such a well created character that
Mhm.
you completely lose the fact that it's Mike Myers. So
And
um
you get Mustafa here, who's a carryover from the 1967. This is, of course, Will Ferrell.
mm,
And
An unfortunate brown face.
yes, he did.
yeah,
He
yeah.
did. He didn't know, and he didn't know about the complications of the of Bigglesworth and in the freezing process. And this is where
Oh
he
yeah,
pushes him,
it
he
numbs
flips him into the
your
chair,
face.
and then we get another one of those things that just gets funnier and funnier. That he's Mufasa's, Mustafa, excuse me, is down burning, and he gives us one of my top 10 lines. Someone help me! I'm still alive. I'm only very badly burned. And then Dr. Evil has the meeting, like, as if it's
Yeah.
some of you might know, some of you are meeting for the first time, and and meanwhile we have Will Ferrell constantly yelling lines, calling ambulance, I'm in a lot of pain, all his excuses how to get out of there. He's the one who designed the hatch, he's like,
Yeah.
and then somebody shows up and then they shoot him, and you think,
Why did you shoot me in the arm?
right, right, and he gets a second shot. So and then that's it. And now, Travis, I was going to say, you've got your Bond villain background here
Oh,
between Frau Farbissina, Random Task, which I think is going to be an easy one for you, and Paddy O'Brien or whatever his name is there. Did you recognize any of the themes of any Bond villains here?
well, yeah. I mean, Random Task is obviously Odd Job.
What gave it away? Was it the name, or was it?
Yeah. And then Frau Farbissina is, I think, a blend of two characters. In From Russia with Love, I think it's either Irma Bunt and Goldfinger. There's Rosa Klebb, and they're almost identical characters. And so I think Frau Farbissina is just kind of playing both of
Is
them.
either one of them
So,
more of the founder of the militant wing of the Salvation Army?
oh man. But no, nothing like the evil Salvation Army.
Some of this character's lines were given to number two. When I was looking at the
Hmm.
script over and things, I saw that some of her lines are taken away from her, and given to the other character, which we'll bring up when he shows up. Also, Rhea Perlman was asked to play this role, and
Really?
I could see that.
regretted not taking it today, by the way. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
sure.
Is it Mindy Sterling, I think, playing Frau? It's funny, like in this era, I see her and she just looks like Sherry O'Terry from
I
SNL. It's
agree.
almost,
Yeah.
I think if you blink, like you could easily confuse the two.
They both just look like my grandmother. I think my grandma had that face.
Okay.
And Sherry O'Terry, by the way, is in one of the cutout lines. Sorry, a deleted
Oh.
scene. She did not
Oh,
not
really?
make it in. Yeah, there's a deleted scene. When we get to it, I'll bring it up. How's that? We'll keep it in context, because you mentioned her.
I want to jump back to the whole Mustafa burning, and the funniest bit about that for me is when Dr. Evil takes the phone call. He calls one of his people, and you can kind of hear the guy on the voice that, yeah, not dead yet.
Yep. Okay. Yep. Yep. And he gets back to business.
The best is when the guy, you can kind of just barely make it out. Like, do you want me to take care of him? And Dr. Evil just says yes, like, and very
Right.
coldly, like,
Yes.
obviously, yes,
Right.
do something about this. So, yeah, that's my favorite little bit in that long running gag. That's what really just I pushes that over the edge for me. We meet Random Task, and man, I forgot about this guy, kind of. Not the character, but the actor, Joe Sun. Do you guys remember anything about him?
No, I was actually looking him up
Yeah,
right
I don't know
now.
anything about him
Okay.
either. What do you
Oh,
know?
he got into some real big trouble in like 2011. He got arrested for some sort of vandalism felony kind of thing,
Torture.
and when his DNA went through the system, they found it was tied to a very heinous crime in 1990. It was I don't know how much I want to get into it here, but it was a gang rape situation in 1990 that his DNA was
Ooh.
attached to. So he went to jail. I think because of the statute of limitations, they couldn't get him on that, but they were able to try him for conspiracy to commit murder and something else that they had to work around it to make to put him away, but they did. And then while he was in prison, he killed his cellmate. So yeah, I don't think he's ever going to be out of prison, but
I'm just glancing at his Wikipedia page, and
yeah.
wow. Yeah, a trigger warning for anybody who wants to look it up. That's
Yeah.
I never knew that. That's
I remember his name making headlines, in like 2011,
mm,
but not paying attention to what it was for, really. So yeah, it's
I'm
pretty
wow.
just
bad,
gonna
bad
I'm
dude.
gonna delete this part out of my head because I enjoy this movie so much. I don't want to think of
I
him.
know.
You
Yeah,
know. Uh,
Oh, that sucks.
one thing I don't like. I don't like the whole Patty O'Brien character at all.
I don't either. It
Hmm.
doesn't work for me.
Alice,
I mean, he
you want to
is.
take the other side of this argument?
No, I was just gonna say he is in what is my favorite scene in this movie,
Oh
but
Okay.
yes,
you
of
could have done
course.
it with somebody else. Yeah, who does number two work for?
Right, right.
Yeah.
But the difference there is
Also,
it.
my late father-in-law's favorite scene in any movie
Who
ever.
would number two work for is a great like play on words, like inside joke. Where this one here, like literally, Mindy has to say like it's a television commercial with a little leprechaun. Like
Yeah.
don't explain it all to me. I mean, it's no, Pat.
Yeah, that character falls kind of flat. I feel like they could have done something else, or you could have taken his plot beats and assigned them to somebody else.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like this at all. And then, fortunately, the next character to be introduced is Robert Wagner, who,
Oh yeah.
in my research, I saw that he picked Robert Wagner because he thought he was the coolest guy in the '60s, and he picked Michael York because he thought something like he was the most sophisticated guy or something like that in the '60s. So that's why he wanted these actors in his film.
Michael York totally works in this movie. I really like the
Mhm.
Basil Exposition character.
Best sequence in the introduction of number two, as he's talking about all the amazing things that they own. We own a steel mill in Cleveland, we owe shipping in Texas, oil refineries in Seattle, and they're showing all the little factories. And then, of course, he nails the line, and a factory in Chicago that makes miniature models of factories.
A factory.
And it lights up, bing, and I'm like,
Yeah.
that
That's
yeah.
And Dr. Evil says like, "Oh,
Yeah.
naturally."
Cut out of this section, by the way, they also own the entire Franklin Mint, who makes all those
Oh,
and he holds up a plate and
yeah.
he says, and our cheese plate collection has gone up 240%. And then he says something like, but there's a risk in these things. It's never guaranteed,
Mm.
but they cut that section out.
That's kind of a reference, I think, in Goldfinger. They use the big map with miniatures, and it might be Diamonds Are Forever that they've got a map with like an oil refinery off the coast and stuff like that. So that's purely a something out of the James Bond stuff as well.
And that also does a really good job of setting up a conflict that we come to later in the
Mm-hmm.
movie, which is Dr. Evil wanting to be a theatrical supervillain versus this very like realistic capitalist oligarchy sort of
Yeah,
villain that number two has set up
yeah. No, it's a
over and
great
over.
setup for later. Yeah. I have to wonder if like watching it, and they talk about Dr. Evil's plan. Like he wants to do this blackmail thing with the royal family,
Mhm.
and you know, I completely forgot that just the timing of this movie. It's only 3 months before Princess Diana
Right.
dies, and obviously, I don't think you'd make this joke. You know, this wouldn't be in the movie. Um, but
I read something
yeah,
about it. I can't remember if they removed that sequence from the movies in Britain, and then they put it, I think they removed it from the international version, and then they replaced it back when it came out in DVD, Travis.
okay.
That part was taken out.
Because it was no longer too soon.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
I believe.
But I mean, obviously they couldn't have known what was going to
Right.
happen, of course.
Throw
But
me a freaking bone here. I'm the boss. Need the info.
another thing that it still kind of holds up, but we view things differently now, and we get Austin in his jumbo jet, and he's just the seduction techniques that he's just throwing at Vanessa.
Oh, I love that jet. The interior
Yeah.
design, I want that wallpaper in my
Yeah,
house.
yeah.
And this is where the Sherry O'Terry sequence was.
Okay.
Oh
Have you seen this
yeah.
before? The deleted.
I saw she is in the trailer.
So she's in the plane with some other there's another woman and another man, and they're basically reviewing, like, what's expected of them on the plane, and she's like, we have some problems with your schedule, and it says something like 4:30 dinner, 5 o'clock get naked, 6 o'clock orgy.
Nice.
And he's like, yeah, huh? Right. Yes. Agree. And she's explaining to him that they're not going to wear these costumes and stuff like that.
Oh.
But that whole sequence, they eventually walk away, or, she's about to strangle him, and they drag her away and everything. And then the next scene picks up right where you see it, where they're sitting in the chair,
Okay.
is there. But I just wanted to bring that up there. And this scene also wasn't, the Dr. Evil scene had kept going after he did the $1 billion. It usually went right into the Scott Evil scene, but they put this little interlude in there to break it up. So
okay. And you get his unsuccessful attempts to flirt with Elizabeth Hurley, like in the way that he used to in the 60s. And she's a very modern, professional, sophisticated, woman of the 90s. So you get the very interesting, like, character interaction with the two of them. And I just love the way he, like, tries to flirt when he's on the bed doing the different poses.
Yeah.
I'm sure as we were all watching with a trained eye, we saw her completely reject him. She will never, the last woman on earth, it wouldn't matter. And then you saw that little smile at the end, right? Everyone, that there's that little hint of, like, maybe he's a little more acceptable than I thought.
Yeah.
Improvised, I believe, a lot of that scene too.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. I had read that 30% of this movie was improvised, they said, fully. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I know the shush line we're about to talk about later is completely
Yeah.
not even in the script at all. They just made that up on the flies.
That stuff is so good.
It's interesting because this movie is really split between Austin Powers and Dr. Evil. It's all they're on two completely different paths that barely intersect, a couple times throughout the movie. But you do have, like, the Dr. Evil, then his ransom plan, and then he meets Scotty. And, meanwhile, like, Austin is all about wooing Vanessa, and then they go to Vegas, and then everything meets up at the end. But here, when they introduce Scott, like, I love Seth Green in this movie. I think Scott Evil is my favorite Austin Powers character.
Yeah, and Seth Green was not actually the actor they wanted for this, and the actor they wanted was actually somebody quite a bit older. It was I think it was Colin Quinn, if you know who that is.
Really?
Yes.
That doesn't make any sense.
I swear I keep seeing that everywhere I look, so I couldn't figure it out either, but they were going to use a much older an actor for him. So yeah, Scott Evil comes in, and Seth Green plays a 15-year-old, no problem.
Yeah.
I was just looking up how old Seth Green is, because I wasn't sure how old Scott was supposed to be.
Yeah, he's supposed to be 14 or 15, depending on where he came from.
Oh, okay.
So
I assume 19, 20.
That's what I thought too. Yeah.
There's a big enough range there that you can kind of believe. Like,
and there is at the dinner scene, he notably does not have his wine glass filled, so I thought maybe he was under 21.
It says in the little, again, I cut and paste certain parts of the script, not an entire script. It says Scott Evil walks out. He is 15, grungy, and wears a Kurt Cobain T-shirt.
Now that I think about it, I think does Frau say something about we waited 15 years for for the whole if he never returns.
She never gives it the line. She says, "Well, after a few years, we got a little impatient, Dr. Evil. Remember when you froze your semen? You said if it looked like you weren't coming back, they tried to make you a son so part of you could live forever." And he's like, "Right. Oh, sure.
Oh, sure.
Sure. Yep. So,
Scott Evil is a great name for a character.
By the way, he's wearing the Kurt Cobain t-shirt, and I mentioned earlier there's alternate endings of it, and I mentioned one of the endings has the Dr. Evil went on to do this, blah blah blah, and one of the endings it says Scott Evil went on to lead this band, I believe it's called the Evil Petting Zoo Band, and it goes, he now is dating Courtney Love, and when they do Far Farbissina, they say blah 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 blah. She's also dating Courtney Love, so Courtney Love gets a little bit of love, no pun intended, at the end of the movie. Alternate ending 3. So
then they go
he doesn't give him a hug, remember that?
I do love that. It's not like I'm freaking Frankenstein over here.
And we're only a third into the movie, by the way, and you see how big it is in the beginning. There's so much. It's so top heavy, this movie.
And this is where Austin and Vanessa, they go to Vegas, and it's kind of reminiscent of the, like I said before, James Bond goes everywhere. Everyone knows he's James Bond. He has the thinnest of aliases. He always uses his name, but he says he's with Universal Exports or whatever. And here we've got Vanessa and Austin, and they show up in Vegas. They're pretending to be a married couple, but he's still dressed like this.
He's talking to people like,
Peacock.
"Hey, how are you doing?" Like, acting like he knows everybody.
Yeah. So I like that this is them in disguise in Vegas. Later, they'll put on actual disguises, but it's fun. And then you get the casino scene at the table with number 2 and a lot of vagina, which, I mean,
it's amazing.
A lot of vagina. It's no worse than Plenty O'Toole or Pussy Galore, as far as like names of femme fatales or whatever. So 13-year-old me or 14-year-old me seeing this, I thought that was Selma Hayek. And for years, like even now, like I think they look very similar and their voices are similar enough. Like I don't know why. I always just, I know it's not that same actress, but it's like Fabiana Udinia, I think is the lady playing Alada here, but
there's a specific current professional wrestler who she really looks like, so I was just thinking about that the entire time. So if anybody listening watches AEW, she has a real Ty Conti vibe.
Alyson, am I correct that you have a background in the podcasts that go minute by minute?
Yes.
If you were going to do a minute by minute, the 5 minutes here between the gambling casino through the line that your father-in-law you mentioned really enjoys here. This would be a good 5-minute run. You could get 5 full episodes out of here.
Oh my god, yeah.
For sure.
This would be a good,
because I have my notes are all cramped on this one little scene here. We mentioned it's in Vegas, Travis. Did you know that the movie was filmed in Vegas? Not filmed in England at all. Not even a single moment. They were in England. Correct.
I thought, like, watching the movie, and when we get to the big Dr. Evil layer, the big huge studio kind of spaces, I would have swore they used Pinewood,
well, they used
in England.
They used Paramount Studios backlot for Soul Bossa Nova and stuff like that too. But they're here in England, and they're here in Vegas, so they really are in Vegas. And of course, we have the section where he's betting, he's playing blackjack, and number 2 has a 17, and he uses his eye patch to see the 4 coming. And the guy says, you have a 17, sir, and he says, "I like to live dangerously." And then, of course, Austin has a 3 showing. He plays a 5. And, the dealer already has a 10. And he says, "I'll stay." And he says, "I suggest you hit, sir." And he says, "I also like to live dangerously." Amazing line. And then to go right into that line, and to tie into the alias that you didn't reference, but I think you're about to, he hits the "allow myself to introduce myself. My name is Richie Cunningham, and this is my wife, Oprah."
Elizabeth Hurley's face when he says Oprah is so good.
And then you think that's the worst introduction of all until the guy says, "My name is number 2." and this is my Italian confidant, a lot of vagina, which you think, oh my goodness, like, does anything make sense to anybody here?
Yeah.
On my rewatch, like number 10, I noticed that Tom Arnold, when he swings in the door to say howdy in the bathroom, he hits the bathroom attendant. I did not I did not catch that
Yeah.
every time.
Oh
That
yeah.
was a new one for
Love
me.
that bit.
So
The blackjack dealer is the soup Nazi from Seinfeld.
yes,
You know?
yes.
And there's another actor later who's in the UN who's like tells Jerry Seinfeld that you're a very bad man for Babu, I think.
Hmm.
But
Is he in this movie as well?
Yeah, he's in the UN.
Oh, okay, in the UN scenes.
One of the
I love
world
the UN
leaders.
scenes.
Well, I'm gonna reveal to you later that there were two major actors, like actors that you can name multiple movies of, who were both cut when their scenes were cut only into international versions. And I just rewatched them with my family today to show them, and they're like, "Why would these scenes cut?" And I explained why. So we'll come to those later. A little bigger than Soup Nazi and Babu. So don't stop this podcast.
Huh. Little teaser for later. Yeah.
I think Alyson should talk to us what happens inside the washroom, because this is her moment.
It's just I'm a child. I love this joke. But Austin Powers goes into the bathroom, and the cowboy's in the next stall, and Patty O'Brien comes out of the little vent above the toilet and goes to strangle Austin Powers with his charm bracelet. But Austin manages to get his fingers underneath it, and eventually he's struggling with him. And the cowboy, is it Tom Arnold?
It is Tom
Yeah.
Arnold. I don't know his name either, but Tom Arnold.
Okay, he hears Austin struggling and making like grunting noises, and he's like, "You okay over there, buddy? Like, let it out." Like trying to encourage him in what sounds like a very like strenuous and enthusiastic evacuation. And he eventually gets Patty O'Brien out and upside down, and like has his head in the toilet. And the cowboy says like, "Hey man, that sounds like a big one. How about a courtesy flush?"
Yeah. We're gonna get through this, man.
Gonna blow
And he's just
out your O-ring, drop a lung.
Who does number 2 work for? And the cowboy says, "That's right. You show him who's boss."
You tell that turd. Oh man.
But yeah, that was my late father-in-law's favorite movie or favorite scene in anything.
Nice.
And we had a very similar sense of humor, so we both appreciated the horrible toilet humor.
But I am certain. Oh, I'm not really certain, but I am certain that they're like, okay, how can we make a number 2 joke in the bathroom? And they're like, well, we'll have to have how do you do this? Who does number 2 work for? I'm like, well, then you're gonna have to have him really struggling in the toilet, and then and then they wrote that whole thing, and it just came together so perfectly.
I wonder if they named the character. I wonder if this came first. Did they kind of work backwards and they set up this joke, and then they say, "Oh, if we make him number 2,
his number 2."
I thought you were going to give me a Bond reference here. Why he's called number 2? I was leaving that one for you.
Well, that's certainly I mean that's I forget which one it's in, but yeah, there are number 2, number whatever. I think it's in From Russia with Love that they are numbered. Some of the henchmen for Spectre, but
and the eye patch is great.
Yeah.
Any businessman with an eye patch, is evil, and right. I assume that's a James Bond reference too.
Yeah. What's his name in Thunderball? Yeah, the bad guy in Thunderball. I can't remember his name, but yeah, he wears an eye patch. I can't think of any other eye patch wearing people in James Bond. It cuts back to Dr. Evil, and he's kind of celebrating and says the warhead is ours. Like, it's so funny how little, like, they don't, they establish the warhead that they're going to get from Kreplakistan. They're going to get this warhead so that they can ransom, hold the world hostage, essentially. But I like that this movie, they don't care about that stuff. Like, it's not important to show how they get this warhead. They just get it.
Yeah, they show a few guys walking on a telemonitor with it.
Which is reused footage from later when they're, they're bringing the warhead into the facility.
They also reuse footage on the UN scenes. When they go back to the UN, they always just show the same scene. But yes, you're right. 5 words. Gentlemen, the warhead is ours. That's it. That's all you get.
That's
all you need.
Whatever. It doesn't matter.
Because this movie is really, it's not a spy movie. It's a love story, basically.
My college-age son enjoys that the UN all have somebody with them who represents like their culture. Yes. If you were like a 9-year-old,
Yeah.
And so I got to look a little closer again. When you're doing these reviews for Real Comic Heroes, you look a little tighter, and I'm like, oh, there's a bullfighter for the Spanish person, and like, oh, I didn't notice
Yeah.
there
Yeah,
was
with the
Japan had
bagpipes.
two people. They had a sumo wrestler
Geisha.
and like a geisha. Like, you're looking around for
Yeah.
all the different weaponry and pitchforks and halberds, and that they're walking around in this.
The sumo wrestler always sticks out to me. It's definitely, it's kind of like I think it's a UN or World Nations whatever meeting in the 66 Batman movie. They do,
Mhm.
they also do very stereotypical, like not everyone's really in costume as much, but yeah, they definitely take it, a few steps further here.
Well, there's a line in here that, I mentioned that I quote this movie a lot, but this is one of the ones that I actually really sort of use in real life. It's not even a forced one. Like, I don't walk around saying, allow myself to introduce myself. I don't do that.
Yeah.
I don't, but I do have a coaching license, so I can coach my kids at track, and I like to be called Coach B as opposed to Mr. B. So occasionally when they call me Mr. B, I will say something like, I didn't spend 10 years in coaching school to be called Mr. And of course,
Evil medical school.
right. Here's what he says. I didn't spend 6 years at evil medical school to be called Mr. Thank you. So
Yeah.
a great line that he.
I want to go to evil medical school. Like
Yeah.
that opens up so many possibilities of like specifically like evil curricula.
There is a Donald Trump 2000 maybe 18 or so when Trump's president, and all these people are getting fired from Trump's cabinet. And I'm not going to make this political because that's not my thing, but I'm making this about Austin Powers. And Dr. Evil is on a skit with, I believe it's Jimmy Kimmel. And he's like, Jimmy Kimmel's like, oh, somebody's been fired late. We have him on the news. And he goes to them and he's like, what did you do there? And he's like, I worked with Ben Carson. We're both evil medical doctors. And then they go through all the different things that he was involved in, all the evil plans in Trump's organization. And then, of course, when they say once in a while in the skit, they'll say something like, oh my God, did you do this terrible thing? And he's like, I'm not a monster. That wasn't me.
Nice.
He takes credit. He takes credit for the wall and a bunch of other evil things. I just wanted to reference because you mentioned the evil medical school here.
That's great. I like when they show this UN meeting room. It's straight up, it's the war room from Doctor Strangelove, which
Yes.
I mean, I would love to know the number of times films, TV shows, whatever, that reference the war room, that basically reuse this set. I mean, I did the Watchmen minute, and the war room in that movie is a literal reference to Doctor Strangelove. I mean, they're doing it here. It's all over film and TV. I'd love to know a number of how many times that's referenced. So,
by the way, this is where Babu is, or whatever, the guy from he's in here. Yes.
Yeah.
I was watching a Stargate. What directors, like when you watch the DVD and they have like the director and the actors talking over it, the commentary with it. And they mentioned that they had a deal that like a desire to never have a war room scene or a boardroom scene that went on for a certain number of minutes without people moving or walking or talking. And that if somebody's talking for more than 20 seconds, someone has to get up, someone has to shout, someone has to have some motions and stuff. And this one here, the fact that they can keep panning back and forth and they close in, they switch to Dr. Evil. It doesn't feel like they're stuck in the war room and you're just sitting people talking. They're nice and animated, and it doesn't get boring, even though they're just, of course, they're also dropping the billion and million jokes about, $100 billion and stuff like that.
Is this when we get the Beavis and Butthead, or is that
That's later?
That's later. Yeah.
That's later when he's threatening them. So
yeah. I think, well, it might not be much later because it's once they have the nuke, but
we're right now in my timeline here. We're about 35 minutes into the movie, so it's a while before we get back to that part. Well, the movie is so short. I mean, we're used to movies these days being 3 hours long.
Yeah.
So
I love that it's an hour.
I can tell you what's going to happen in the next 80 minutes. I promise you. So,
there's this one bit where they're spying on random tasks. They see him coming out of this VirtueCon building in Vegas, and he's got the cat with him, and he's loading it in the car, and they drive away, and Vanessa says, well, he's getting away. And they make no effort to go after him. Instead, Austin suggests, let me take you out for the night on the town, and that's really like, that's another example of this movie is not about the spycraft
Yeah, his
and
mission
any of
is
that stuff.
secondary.
Yeah, yeah, it's really just about these two. So
Mhm.
I just thought that was funny. It that would drive me nuts if this wasn't an Austin Powers movie, but because it's Austin Powers and like there's a genuineness to this movie that I really like. That I'm glad like it doesn't go too far into spoof
Mhm.
movie. It's not a Zucker Abrams, airplane, Naked Gun. Like it doesn't sometimes it goes there, but it doesn't always live in that,
Mhm.
spoof movie territory, I guess.
It also is a genuine love story about two opposite personalities
Yeah.
coming
Now,
together.
in this whole sequence, and my notes can also be incorrect at times. This is the one that starts off with the first sequence of like someone in the background is naked. They're using their hands to cover things, I believe,
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
and
That
Yes, yeah,
and
Austin is
it's
naked.
going to end with
Yeah.
him not taking advantage of her while she's drunk, which is a
yeah,
big growth movement in the show. It's got the
sure.
by the way, the Burt Bacharach album. I believe it was Tom Jones when it first started there, but if you got Burt
Mm,
Bacharach in the show, you switch the thing there.
Yeah.
Also, this
yeah.
has one of my other top 10 lines in it, the nutshell line.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
That is good.
Oh, this is me in
Help
a
them in a
nutshell.
nutshell. What kind of nut has a shell like this? This is me in a
Mm.
nutshell. I think that's kind
Mhm.
of cute.
All the visual stuff he's doing, it's pure just Mike Myers goofing around, but it works. The escalator and canoe and all that
Mhm.
stuff, those gags behind the couch, like it all
I
works.
I think with the exception of maybe the sequence at the group therapy, I think around here though
Mm.
the movie sort of starts to fall flat for me at this point.
It
This is
yeah.
like the last
Mm.
really good
Yeah.
bit because now we're going to have to be a little more serious about we really need to
Mhm.
get Austin and Vanessa together or not together. We have to deal with the a lot of vagina and getting the plans from her and
Mhm.
stuff. So the movie takes off, and then there's like there's gonna be some battles and the fembots are coming up, but I think the movie here starts to dip a little bit. I mean, I still enjoy it. Don't get me wrong, but this
Mhm.
is the
Yeah.
last moment of my nutshell joke is the last one for a while. I'm going to be happy with.
Mhm. Yeah,
um
and the scene where he goes to a lot of vagina's penthouse is very like,
Right.
no, come
yeah.
on,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's not fun. The jokes aren't that good. There's a carrot top joke in there. But, actually, are we going to talk about that? Are we on that scene, or are we want to go back and talk about something
Oh,
else?
right. They show it on right.
He's looking at the
It's all
Virtucon
coming back to me.
plans. He gets in
Yep.
there, he
Right.
Yeah,
crawls in,
it's
and he's
carrot
taking pictures with his
movie.
little camera, and he sees, and one of
Yeah.
one of the things is all the evil things that are going on, and they have Carrot Top movie in there. But
Yeah.
but then it's really like you said, Allison. It's going to be, oh no, he's going to end up having relations,
Right, like, we're just like getting emotionally invested
right?
in this
And you
Yeah.
realize
relationship.
he's going to
And
blow this because, like,
yeah,
Sure.
um,
you're like, no, you're growing so much as a character.
And it's
Don't
not
do it.
even he doesn't gain anything by sleeping with her. He's
No.
already got the photos. He's already got the
Mhm.
information. I mean, you could squint and say that in order to get away from the situation, he needed to sleep with her, but you
Mm,
know,
yeah.
not really. So,
how about we say
um,
he hasn't had sex in 30 years?
I mean
there's
that
that.
too. Yeah.
Yeah.
But to him,
Yeah.
but to him, he still believes in free love. So to him,
Mhm.
this
Sure.
isn't a big deal. Like he can have sex with her and still
Right.
love
They
Vanessa.
just have completely different mindsets
Hmm.
about it.
Yeah.
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 So
You get after that you get the fembot sequence where they unveil the fembots.
Mhm.
I didn't really have any notes about that, but it's iconic. I
Mhm.
think.
my note was just that that when they reveal the fembots, he says, "I like to see girls of that caliber."
Yeah,
It's a
I
homonym.
like it. Yeah, it's homonym. I do like that one doesn't get any it doesn't get any traction in the room.
No,
So
Yeah, everyone no sells it.
right. And
yeah,
yes, then he explains it. By that, I mean their
Yeah.
quality of their character and also the choice of weaponry they have. Then he says,
And
forget
she
it.
is that when she shoots with the
yeah,
boobs and then
yeah, yeah.
Did anybody look up who the fembots were?
I did. I
I
definitely
didn't
recognized
recognize
Cindy
anybody.
Margolis.
Yeah.
She was in the 2000s. She was the most downloaded woman
Hmm.
in the world, I
Yeah.
guess. She was kind of famous for just being a swimsuit
Hmm.
model, I think.
Hmm.
Yeah. No,
Um,
agreed. Nobody in there amounted to any more than like I was a playmate of the year or I was a famous
yeah.
model or something like that. So yep.
Yeah.
So We go. We. The next scene is the another. It's okay. It's the scene with. It's the callback to the. That's no woman. It's a man. It does start off with a line that says, either talk about nuclear war, and he says only two things scare me, and one is nuclear war. And they're like, what? What?
What's the
What
other?
do you mean? What's the other thing that scares you? Connies, circus folk, nomads, smell like cabbage, really small hands. So
That's one of my favorite lines
so good.
from this movie. I do love referencing carnies. Small hands smell like cabbage.
yeah.
So.
And then
and then
he
you
punches
get
the mother. Yep.
exposition.
She's
So
she's just a sweet old lady.
Yeah.
Everybody's freaking out.
Well, she is rather mannish. So,
and then we get the that's kind of like where it starts to go downhill for Austin. It's kind of leading us into the
he needs to start changing his game. He's still been playing everything as if it's the 1960s, and he needs to adjust his approach.
Yeah, he hasn't quite hit rock bottom yet. That'll come a little bit later with Vanessa, but it does lead us into this group therapy session with Scott and Dr. Evil.
Oh, so
and
good.
Again, it's like this movie is so like it's almost like a series of vignettes. Most of the Dr. Evil stuff we've had is just him in the boardroom. It's almost like it's all just shot in one scene, and then here we get him on a different location. But most of it, it's all just disconnected.
Really self-contained.
Yeah. I don't mind that. It's just there's no crossover with a lot of characters sometimes. So, no, this is the story that Dr. Evil tells to this group, that's being led by Carrie Fisher. I love the stuff about Dr. Evil's father, and that he was a womanizer. He would drink. He'd had ridiculous claims like he invented the question mark. Just all this
Sometimes
stuff.
he would accuse chestnuts of being lazy.
Yeah. I don't know where this comes from. This is so great. The only Bond reference I could get from this is where he says that they would have luge lessons, and I know that On Her Majesty's Secret Service kind of has in the layout or the location for the climax of that movie involves a luge, because they're in like a post-Olympic village kind of place. So
I just thought I thought that was just the fact that nobody does that when he says, my childhood was typical. Summers in Rangoon, luge lessons. In the spring we'd make meat helmets. I'm like, no, nobody does that.
Yeah. So the meat helmets thing.
I don't know either.
Yeah.
Wait, meat helmets?
He says, in the spring we'd make meat helmets. If I was insolent, I'd be placed in a burlap sack and beaten with reeds. Pretty standard, really.
This is a total tangent, and I'll send you links to this later. But are you familiar? Have you seen modern day Heathcliff comics?
How modern day?
No.
current Heathcliffs.
No.
I can't tell if they're meant to be sincere or not. It's just like a surrealist masterpiece. But Heathcliff has a meat helmet.
Okay. Huh.
It's like a running gag. You have to look up.
Okay.
Heathcliff is genuinely amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know if the creator has completely lost his mind or what.
Yeah.
Well, Travis, you mentioned that he hadn't hit rock bottom yet, but I believe the next scene.
Yeah, but he's about
to. Before we leave this group therapy thing.
Oh yeah, let's go. I can do this all day. I got 100 lines written down for this.
Scott says something. I mean, he starts talking about the problems that they're having, and he's like, he wants to kill me. And then Dr. Evil's like, no, the boy is correct. I'm trying to kill him. He's quite wily, like his old man. But I don't know where that comes from. And James, maybe with the international version, maybe there's something to this. Like he's trying to kill me. The animosity of them versus each other.
But no, that has
until then we haven't seen any of that.
Well, we've seen him reach for the button many times.
Not yet. Later.
Oh, he hasn't tried to push the button yet on them.
No, that's why this comes from nowhere, and I almost wonder if this therapy session is meant to be later.
Okay, interesting. The deleted scenes are near the end, the big ones, and in order, this does fall here. Maybe they're just setting it up. Yeah, that's a good point. It would have made more sense after he sees him trying to push the button.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's just
Yeah, 'cause he
another tie-in because everything they say here is like to be taken like it feels like the
Yeah.
whole world is.
Right.
He feels like he's listen to the words he says, you know. And she's like,
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
trying to kill me, and then she says, you know, when people say you're trying to kill, you know, he's trying to kill me,
Yeah.
it's not, it's just words, Scott. And like you said, and everything
Yeah.
you just said is correct.
No, I'm actually trying to kill
Yeah.
him. And I guess we don't really need to see that just because we've seen how there's sort of an animosity between them, and you can just kind of fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
Like he probably
But-
tries to kill
But if
him.
you're taking this seriously, why? Why is he trying to? It seems like he wanted a
Right.
hug. It seems like he wanted an heir. He wants him to take over the world. Why would he be trying to kill him?
Right. It's a
he's not
line that
yet.
kind of comes out of nowhere. I just later
He's
it'll make sense,
rebellious.
but
He's not. He doesn't have any interest in
Yeah.
continuing the family
It's
business.
it's a gag that maybe didn't need to be here. If you're gonna try to if you're
Yeah.
gonna try to keep the story intact, so
We should have
we're
established
calling it
that.
out now. Travis caught a line that doesn't fit with the story.
plot hole. No. Yeah, and then this is where where Austin and Vanessa have their, I can't remember where this takes place. I guess
think
it's
it's in
in
the
their hotel
hotel.
room.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, oh that's right, because Vanessa is concerned. She feels maybe jealous, but you know, doesn't know why. And yeah, he confirms her suspicions and tells her,
And-
yeah, he shagged her rotten.
And she
Um,
also is kind of morally or moralistically opposed to his kind of philosophy of free love.
Yeah. And the first time watching this, I'm like, did he do anything wrong? You know, because I'm still, I viewed this like the first time around, like she still wants nothing to do with him, you know,
Mhm.
in that way. Then watching it the second time, I'm like, well, they did have that nice, you know,
Twister game.
evening together, Twister,
Yes.
and they had fun. And so maybe he shouldn't have slept with her. And, you know, so
Mm.
it's
You know, you reference a lot of your Bond
Mm.
movies because you're a movie guy. And even though I'm
Yeah.
not really a Bond person at all, I actually have watched a lot of television spy dramas. I'm big on
Sure.
Nikita. I'm big on. I
Okay.
got my poster over here for The Americans to the side of me.
Mhm.
Alias, of course, which is, you know, they're all like kind of the same thing.
Sure.
I've seen La Femme Nikita and the Nikita rebranding. If you're dating someone and they're a spy, they can sleep with whoever they want. I'm just telling you right now,
Yeah.
across the board in every single TV show. So
Yeah.
he is not in the wrong in this. At this, he's fine right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like that's part of the job for being a spy.
Yeah.
You're gonna use your seductive wiles.
Yeah,
Right.
but
You want to use all of the tools at your disposal.
but Travis, you did bring up a good point. You probably didn't have to in that particular
Right.
scene as well.
Right.
Yeah. Vanessa says like the line she has that really stuck out to me. She says, you know, if you want us to have if you want us to have a relationship, and I'm like, well, is that what you want? Because you firmly, you know, made your claim that you would never sleep with him, and obviously then that their relationship changes and they become closer, but it's still, I don't know if it rings true or if it seems fair. Probably isn't the right word. I don't know, but I have a hard time, like, you know, did he do anything wrong? They aren't in a relationship,
Right.
you know, so I don't know. It's a gray area, I think, here. But
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
I have in my notes, this
yeah.
is the only really serious scene in the whole movie. These 3
is.
minutes, there's nothing, there's like no jokes in here.
Yeah.
He watches
leads us into
all
the
his friends are
sad
dead. They
montage.
all died from drugs, overdose, and the ham sandwich maybe is it's not even a joke. It's kind of true with Mama Cass.
Yeah.
And then he's
Yeah.
drinking all the tab, which is almost a joke because it's tab. And the
I
Liberace
wondered about that.
is
Yeah.
gay. Who would have thought? You know, maybe, but it's still a serious scene that starts off there. So
Yeah, it's definitely the sad montage. I did notice, like, as he's the tab cans. I wasn't sure if that's just tab. It's so 90s. I didn't know what that was.
So Allison's all upset here because of the situation, and you're all questioning, did he do anything wrong? And then immediately they're on the VirtueCon tour, and within 3 sentences, he's just making jokes about, like, she's like, what do you think of her? Who are you talking about? You know who I'm talking about. Oh, her, she's nasty. You know, she's a village bicycle. Everyone had a ride. You know, oh, I don't care. And then she's
Trying not to
yeah.
laugh.
So it's sort of like,
Yeah.
okay, we're past that. Everyone, can we go on with the movie here?
Yeah.
And I will tell you that in a moment, we're going to hit the first big, huge edit and change in the international movie, which I think you guys would be interested in since you're invested this far. So in my notes, we're at the 59-minute mark in the movie now. So we're 2/3 through. They go on the VirtueCon tour, And, as we just talked about, they've sort of made up with each other. And she smiles and says, okay, it's all right that you did this or whatever, which kind of ridiculously forgives him very quickly. But they show two people, a really, really tall gentleman and then like a larger woman, to show you the size of their lab coats would be, very extreme. They'd be bought at the big and tall shops. And they're like, you take her, I'll take him. And then, of course, like they walk in the bathroom and they follow them in their crazy costumes. Now they're dressed up in some crazy outfits to be undercover. And when they walk out, the big funny joke is that their costumes, the lab coats fit them perfectly, even though they wouldn't have fit them. So,
Perfectly tailored.
so here's the first scene that was cut. And there's 3 big cuts that are in the American version that appear in the international version. And this is the one that maybe I think could have fit the best, if you allow me to explain it to you.
Sure.
They have their little badges, and now the badges don't have their pictures on them. And they get stopped by a guard, and the guard is played by the actor Christian Slater. And Christian Slater says, and I actually have like almost the verbiage here, so I'll kind of paraphrase, even though it's not very long. He's like, Vanessa's like, look, it's a guard. What are we going to do? We don't look anything like our photo badges. And he's like, don't worry, baby. I learned a mind control technique during my travels to India. And then he explains some stuff that I'll skip ahead. And then Slater says, hi, folks, you're entering a restricted zone. I'm going to have to see some identification. And he hands him the badges. And he kind of does like the Jedi mind trick. He stares at me, he says, everything seems to be in order. And immediately Christian Slater sort of crosses his eyes a little bit. He goes, everything seems to be in order. And she said, and then Vanessa goes, it's fantastic, Austin. Come on, let's go. And he goes, wait. He goes, I'm going to go across the street and get you some orange sherbet. And then Christian Slater's like, I'm going to get you some orange sherbet. And then he's like, here, have a piece of gum. Have a piece of gum. And he's like playing with him. And believe it or not only does that happen, but there's a callback to this coming up later, to this moment. So this leads into to another scene, and then immediately there's another cut scene. After this is when they have the steamroller part. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, the steamroller stuff. I never realized that this room is full of steamrollers. Just they're driving all over the place.
The sign says steamroller testing facility, by the way.
Yeah, at the end of the scene when they leave, they escape. Yeah, then you see a sign that says, steamroller testing facility. But just the joke, the visual joke mostly of this guard trying to stop them and being
and how far away he is from the steamroller.
20 feet away.
And Austin's even like, get out of the way.
Watch out.
The weird thing, the funny thing is they drive far enough to run over the guy and then immediately stop and run. Like you either could have stopped beforehand. The whole thing is
the guy, of course, is also 30 feet away, and he has like 15 seconds to take a step to the right or left.
Yeah.
It's the actress Mike McDonald from Mad TV. And after his death, there's another one of the deleted scenes, and I think the scene actually should not be in the movie because I think it really slows the movie down. It's shorter, but they give a close-up of the guard being killed. It's okay.
Oh, him being
and then
I think I have. I think I remember seeing that somewhere.
I think I've seen that.
So it cuts to a family house, and after he gets rolled over, there's a woman rolling dough with like a rolling pin. Okay. And she's listening to some music and the phone rings, and it's actually, now this part I found online when I was looking the research. It's actually a former Bond girl, Lois Childs. Okay. She answers the phone and she says, hello, this is Mrs. Harvin. Yes, my husband is a henchman in Dr. Evil's private army. You see where this is going.
Okay.
Oh God, thanks for calling. And then a boy walks in the room and she's like still shocked. And he goes, hi, Mom. And she goes, sit down. You know what the kid's name's going to be, Billy. I've got some bad news. Your stepfather was run over by a steamroller. And the kid goes, but Mom, since Dad left, Steve's been like a father to me. And she says, honey, people never think how things affect the family of a henchman.
Wow.
That's very true.
With what little I've given you, do you like it in the international version, or do you want it like without it?
Yeah, I want that in the film.
See, I don't want that in the film. I like that you disagree.
I like that on its own as a concept. Like I mentioned the Venture Brothers earlier, and I feel like that's one of the things I really like about the Venture Brothers, is that it explores like what home life is like for a supervillain's henchman. But I don't know if there's really space in this movie for that scene.
I would take it at the end of the movie, Travis. I just don't want it right here,
That'd
because
be a
the
good credit.
Yeah.
next scene is
Into the
the next scene is Random Task hitting their heads together. Like, it goes right to it.
Oh, right.
It's like it breaks up the. I mean, it's a gag. It's a big
Yeah.
gag. There's one more like this coming up. That's the last thing that they cut out of the movie. But thank you for letting me share those with you.
Yeah. Lois Chiles she is in Moonraker. She's paired up with Roger Moore. She's Dr. Holly Goodhead.
Wow, nice.
I believe. Yeah.
Goodhead.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that an Austin Powers joke?
Oh, sorry, I'm getting all mixed up here.
This is the Beavis and Butthead. Welcome to my underground lair, Austin Powers, and he's talking to the guys, and that's when he tells them goodbye to the UN people, and as he turns off the thing, because you're gonna, at Beavis and Butthead, they're talking about Total Recall. Beavis and Butthead, they're doing this. They're talking about the girl with three boobs. I assume it's Total Recall because
yeah.
So, and this is also going to be the sequence where he's going to put him in a easily escapable situation with a overly elaborate exotic death. He's like, why don't we just shoot him?
That's right.
So,
for some reason, when
I have a gun in my room right now.
this version of Scott, it feels like a different version, or maybe there's something that they changed. He starts the scene like Dr. Evil's asking him about his day, and he says that he and a friend, they went to a arcade or something, video store, and the guy they couldn't speak the language, and he was speaking French, and I think Scott says something about like Paris talk,
right.
and I don't know. Like their location is in Vegas, so I don't know.
I think I can help here. I believe they're not speaking French, and Scott is acting like a 15-year-old because he's like, the guy was hassling us. We're like, hey, we don't speak the language, and they were all like talking French or something, and they were talking Paris talk. The fact that he's talking Paris talking French, they probably were speaking Indian or Spanish or something, and he doesn't even know what they're talking about. There's no way it's French. That's what
it's funny. It's funny to be like, I don't want to say racist, but like racist towards the French.
Yeah, that's totally fine.
Right, like what language could it not be? They're like French, and they're like done.
Yeah,
speaking some moon speak, like they speak in Paris.
Like, I mean, I can't think of another language because you can't pick like an English language. It wouldn't make any sense because they don't understand it. And then every other language maybe is true. Like they don't speak all these other languages. French is the only one that wouldn't fit. Like if it was like, oh, they're speaking Spanish, like, yeah, sure. So I love it being French. But yes, Scott Evil comes in and he's all like aligned with his dad and very serious and not like, and actually there's a funny joke here where he talks about he's going to watch Skinamax. And then Dr. Evil's like, is this how you want to live your life? And Austin Powers is nodding his head like, yeah, sure.
No, that works.
That's what I want to do.
So it sounds like Scott sort of does have his own predilection towards villainy, just not in the way that his father wants him to.
Yeah. Yeah, he's definitely got an evil streak in him.
He's a dirtbag.
Especially when, the whole idea of he even notes like, were you feeding him? When they present Austin with a meal and all this. You feeding him? But just kill him. I've got a gun in my room.
In these lines here that they're going to talk about his request to have the sharks with the laser beams.
Yeah,
these lines were given to Frau Farbissina originally. I like them better with number 2 because number 2 is going to have that disagreement later on with him about how much work he's done for him. So I like the fact that he also had to.
Yes, your number 2 having to be the one to explain about like the corporate red tape, like
Right.
as the head. He could have gotten first, but number 2 wants to do things like the quasi legal way.
Right. Yeah. We tried to get some, but it would take months to clear up the red tape because they've been placed on the endangered species list.
I like they do have sea bass. Right.
They're mutated sea bass. Are they ill-tempered? Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, that's a start.
And then, of course, we get the close the tank. Well,
Yeah.
You're actually going to watch them? They'll get away. No, we'll leave them alone and not actually witness them dying. And we'll just assume it all went to plan.
Yeah.
And it's lowering them pretty slowly too. Like they could probably very easily get off.
I watched Mike Myers in an interview with whoever was doing the Tonight Show at the time, and they had him on there, and he mentioned this specifically, like what this movie's about, and he said, the villains will do stupid things, like explain their plan completely and not watch the people die. So this was a big part of it for sure.
Nice. Yeah, then I didn't really write down notes as far as like the way they escape and them splitting up and going down the kind of the background behind the scenes kind of tunnel that they escape from. If you guys have anything on that particularly, but
this is also I do have something here because it's the last of the missing scenes that's significant here. So I also don't care about how they escape. It's kind of dumb. And there's a couple jokes at the end, not a good time to lose one's head, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But after the guy dies, as they leave the room. So just to recap for the listeners who I don't know who's listening who hasn't seen this movie, but he holds the guard next to the sea bass, and they chew off his head. He gets decapitated. And like you said, they leave. But in the international version, the camera zooms in on his ID, and there's and it shows his name, and it says John Smith. And here we go again with something that Travis is going to like, and you can be the tiebreaker, Alyson. The camera zooms in, and then it goes from his badge in his shirt. It cuts to a waitress's shirt at Hooters, and she's holding beers. And Rob Lowe walks up to the table and says, guys, help me. He's got like 6 beers in his hands. He goes, can you believe, and the name is John Smith on the badge, can you believe that John Smith is getting married tomorrow? And one guy goes, oh, I can't. Where's Smitty anyway? It's not like it'd be late for anything, especially a stag party. Rob Lowe says, well, he works as a henchman for Dr. Evil. Sometimes they work late. I can't just say something that might be a little sappy. It's such a tribute to our buddy, John Smith. So many of his close friends are here to honor him today. There's a lot of love in this room. And they all cheer, and a girl walks over and she goes, hi, I have a phone call for the John Smith party. And Rob Lowe goes, oh, I'll take care of it. And he goes to the phone at the bar, and he goes, he's dead? Decapitated by an ill-tempered, mutated sea bass? Yes, okay. He walks back to the table, and they go, what's wrong? He goes, what happened? Is John coming? Is he coming late? And Rob goes, John Smith won't be coming. Why not? He was decapitated by an ill-tempered, mutated sea bass. Oh my God, are you kidding me? And they hold up their things and they go, to Smitty. It's like, to Smitty. So that scene was cut out of the movie.
I can see why that was
again.
That one doesn't work for me.
Well, Rob Lowe will make an appearance, I believe, in another Awesome.
Oh yeah.
This covers all the important things. There's like 1 or 2 little one-liners I might mention, but I wanted to throw that in there because that's exactly where it fits. This segues to the part where we get some little car and it's stuck in between the walls.
Just to do the 3-point turn.
Yes.
Yeah, that still holds up. One of the best visual gags, I think, in the franchise.
Did you guys look at the car and try to figure out how they got it there? Did you do that, or just me? I'm like, there must be an opening. It's like they have to lift it up and walk it down the hall, like because there's very little room for that car to fit there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Then they kind of go into the whole evil drill prep that Dr. Evil is kind of doing. They're it's very much like he visually looks like Dr. No in this kind of outfit that he's wearing. He looks like Dr. No. The sequence itself is a little bit like some stuff they do in The Spy Who Loved Me and in You Only Live Twice. So
are they able to sit in chairs in their costume though?
I wondered if that really happened, like if that was a mistake or he just slipped and Mike Myers is he knows enough to play it off. Did
you guys watch the TV show Hannibal?
No,
I did not either. Please share.
Mads Mikkelsen in scenes where as Hannibal he does his serial killing wears one of those full body plastic suits. So I was just thinking about him like trying to stand cool or like not being able to sit in a chair like when you were getting used to the suit.
Yeah. It's probably hard to do
Watch
anything
Hannibal. It's a great show.
Yeah. That's your other plug?
That's my other plug, Hannibal.
Okay.
Anyway.
Then we get Austin, he goes back, he's split up with Vanessa. She's going to get help. He goes and interacts with the fembots. Yeah. So it's a fun enough sequence. It kind of goes on too long, I felt, but they do need to, I guess, give Vanessa enough time to Like, if you actually think about it, it's amazing how fast she is at getting back to headquarters and then returning with, reinforcements. So
Or Austin's striptease just goes on way longer than we see.
yeah, maybe we got the edited version. So I guess I can't complain too much.
I love in some of the scenes where you see him shirtless just how ridiculous of a like
Yeah,
chest hair wig that is. It's long. Like the
yeah.
chest hair is like as long as my head hair. Like, when
You
you see
see it
some of it,
really
it's so
well,
funny.
like in a side view at
Yeah,
the end after they're like married. He's
yeah.
sitting, in his side.
Yeah, from the side you can see how long it
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
Oh my
The
god.
chest hair bit is pretty funny.
And how he always wears the underwear with the Union Jack on it.
Right.
But I love his little striptease. Like
Yeah.
his goofy raw sexuality
Sure.
destroys the fembots, and I think that's great. And you can tell Mike Myers is having a lot of fun with it.
Oh,
So
sure.
even though it goes on for a little bit too long, I still think it's a really fun scene.
Yeah. Does it work for you, James?
I do not like the fembot scene at all. I have
Okay.
that as
No,
like everything you don't like about it. It goes on too long.
his
Yeah.
raw sexuality is too much for you.
Yeah.
I have to avert my eyes. No,
Mm,
I just think no. It's one of those things where okay, this whole movie's unrealistic because you can't have a frozen guy go up in a big boy and circle the planet. But I'm
sure.
supposed to believe that the fembots can be destroyed by him, rubbing his hairy chest and stuff. And I'm like,
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's the power of his mojo.
but
Yeah.
It's a
but
super.
you choose to live in a certain world of believability, and that part there
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
breaks it for me, and that's what I
Okay.
can't get past.
Right on.
Does it make you horny, baby?
I don't have a problem with fembots existing apparently, but I have a problem with them being destroyed by his mojo. So
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
cross mojo and stuff.
Mm,
Yeah, it just doesn't do it for me. But thank you for checking.
right.
Hey, the music Secret Agent Man kicks in right around here.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Mhm.
That
What's that
I
from?
do
Tell me
like
what that's from,
that.
Travis.
I mean, I don't know where it's from. I know it from this and Ace Ventura, but I don't know where it originates.
I'm going to assume that there's a Secret Agent Man TV show, by the way, in the 60s, because if you don't know it as a movie, it's going to be a, let's see if I can find a Johnny Rivers song TV series.
I assumed it was from
Oh, yeah.
something from the
It
60s
is
or 70s.
yeah, it is from the 60s. It looks like it was
Okay.
written, it was used for the spy Danger Man.
Repo Man, Bowfinger, Can't Buy Me Love. It was also used in.
Yeah, it looks like it was used in from 64 to 66 for the Danger
Danger Man?
which also which was also known as Secret Agent Man in the United States. Apparently, they just renamed it after that.
Okay.
So there you go.
Mm.
Yeah. I knew as a wedding DJ that I had that song on an old soundtrack for some reason. So it had they grabbed something from the 60s, but good for them to get a nice tie-in like that.
Yeah, it totally works. I mean, it's obviously a great song for this movie.
Yeah.
And it leads us into like the army versus army, kind of battle that you get in You Only Live Twice and Spy Who Loved Me and a few other Bond movies. I love a good, good guys versus bad guys, a big team, army on each side, and then that gives the hero and villain time to, interact or chase
It's less
each
than a
other.
minute, Travis, the whole fight.
I know.
I'm sorry to tell you.
Yeah. It really does wrap up very quickly. Dr. Evil just kind of bumbles his way out of the scene. Austin kind of goes after him. He's firing at him.
I want
nothing-
tuna. I want liver. He's just shaking the meow. He's looking for Mr. Bigglesworth. He's standing there trying to find his cat.
And then, you get this standoff between Austin Powers and Dr. Evil. They each get a hostage.
He takes Scott.
Austin takes Scott, and then Dr. Evil says, "Oh, go ahead, kill him. I don't care." And this is another bit where Scott says, "Like we just had a breakthrough in group," and
right.
then Dr. Evil says, "Well, I had the group liquidated, so I don't know when that was supposed to happen because we the last time we saw them together." Dr. Evil was about to press the button on, sending Scott down into the fiery pit or whatever.
I guess Scott didn't realize that, maybe.
Yeah. It's just
like he thinks he's making inroads, but Dr. Evil is just not on the same page.
I just kind of wonder if there's a bunch of Scott and Dr. Evil footage that maybe wasn't shot but was scripted, or was shot and just never even made it to deleted scenes. I don't know, but I feel like this comes from nowhere. But That's the only thing that I found in my second viewing that just didn't work was a lot of the, as much as I love the characters, the scenes are just weird. It feels like they're just thrown in here, the Dr. Evil and Scott stuff. So I don't know. Then we find that kind of really the secondary villain, number 2, comes in and kind of ends the standoff by revealing that he's going out on his own. He's done listening to Dr. Evil, and it makes sense, like he says, and I think Alyson, you alluded to it earlier, like he's grown this corporation from what they started at, while Dr. Evil was gone, and now they they have $9 billion or whatever
An
that they
evil
made last
empire.
year. Yeah, like they don't need to do these crazy schemes to make money. That seems to be their, at least number 2. That's kind of his main goal. Yeah, I like the just enough of a villain turn, additional villain turn here by number 2.
So hold on, what, you think there's a villain? You mean a good guy turn? You saying
Not
you
really.
think it's
No,
a
I
villain turn?
don't. No. I don't
It's
mean
just a
he's
different
going good.
Yeah, just a different type of villainy.
It's a betrayal. It's like a Starscream versus Megatron.
Okay, that kind. So there's a, I keep mentioning the international versions and cutscenes. So there's a cutscene here that didn't make the air for either one, and I don't have it written down, but it's in my head because I've watched it in the last 2 days. He sits down, he opens up a briefcase, and he says he has a nice briefcase. He opens it up. It's not the one that has the fembot in it.
Okay.
And he said this
great visual.
He's
joke.
He's already gone through the part. I was going to have a cover story in Forbes, but now he sits down. And he says, "Dr. Evil, I have a proposition for you," which he does in the real movie too. But he sits down, he opens up the briefcase, and he says to him, "There's $1 billion in here." And Austin takes a wad of bills and he puts it up against his ear, and he flips through it, and then he goes, "It's $832. He goes, "You're shy $832." And he goes, "I had to buy the briefcase." he goes, "I have a problem with that." He goes, "It's a very nice briefcase." He goes, "No, I don't have a problem with the briefcase. I have a problem they didn't have a choice in choosing the briefcase." And then while they're arguing about this, he then gets the button pushed, which sends him back into his death, where number 2 gets killed. In one of the alternate versions, he doesn't die, by the way, here also. In one of the versions, he's only very badly burned. Also, before the place blows up, I will do my last of these international things for those who are excited to hear about the changes. If you want to get a copy of this one day, as they're running through the building, escaping at this point, Christian Slater reappears and lets him know that he has the orange sherbet. "I brought you orange sherbet."
Oh, God.
But also that scene had to be removed because they removed the first Christian Slater.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
let's see what else. Yeah, I mean, they get away. I do like seeing just the location that they're at when they get out of the base. They're at the Vasquez Rocks, which is a huge filming location for, most of the Star Trek, the early Star Trek series. I know they revisited it for Picard. Just a very famous rock formation that has been used for tons of stuff, but I know it mostly from Star Trek. But and then we get this 3 months later little bit tacked on here. Ends with a clearly there's been a wedding, and it's not unlike on Her Majesty's Secret Service, where Bond marries Teresa, where she ends up getting killed by Blofeld at the end of that movie, right after they get married. So wonder if they thought about doing something like that here. I know with what happens to Vanessa at the start of the next movie, it almost would have worked out better had they followed that, but it's a real downer ending. So
yeah, I wouldn't like that. I don't like what they did with Vanessa in the second one.
Yeah.
There are 3 endings of this movie. You could Google that. You can Google these online, the endings, if you wanted to look at them. But this is the best of the 3 for sure. I did see also one of the cut scenes is when Random Task attacks them, and they finish him off by using the pump to destroy him.
Yeah.
Austin is reaching beside him, trying to grab something, and all the things that are on the table, it's like a knife, a crowbar, a billy club, a gun.
Oh.
He never can grab the right weapon. They have that little gag. They cut that part out. But I do really enjoy the line, and you can modify this line anytime anybody hurts you in life. But the real line is, "That really hurt. I'm going to have a lump there, you idiot. Who throws a shoe? Honestly, you like a woman." But you can do that anytime somebody hits you with a door in real life or kicks you or something. You can say, "Oh, that really hurt." You have and it never never fails.
Just I love the gag with him coming in as the waiter with
Yeah.
only one shoe, and then he lifts off the silver platter and the shoes like they're in the bed of kale. Like it's so unnecessary.
And why didn't
I think
Travis? Can you explain why didn't that shoe kill him if the other shoe was able to break the
Yeah.
statue? Could you just let your listeners know how that happened? What's different
No,
there?
I mean, there's no explanation to why it
Austin
doesn't
Powers is just
decapitate
that
him.
powerful.
Yeah, it's just his raw manliness, I guess.
His mojo protects him.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
got it.
I think the room service cart kind of reveal, the slow reveal that it's really a henchman is kind of our final James Bond reference. It's when the end of Diamonds Are Forever, two of the henchmen, they survive and everything, and they make their final attack on James Bond, and they start with bringing in this food room service cart. So I think it's kind of what they're calling back there. So.
Well, if I'm not going to go into too much detail on the alternate endings, I told they're similar, except one has the additional like where is everybody today. But maybe if I tell you a little bit about it, you can call back your Bond knowledge on this one, Travis. Both of the other ones, they're in a yellow lifeboat. And the girl is in a bikini in each time, and he's there. And Basil Expedition, and one of them comes down, is lowered down on a helicopter and has a conversation with them. And in the other one, it's just Basil Expedition narrates over it. But both times they're in the yellow. Does that ring a bell at being in a yellow?
Oh, yeah.
What would that be from?
I mean, not necessarily yellow, but yeah, there's like 3 or 4 Bond movies. I think From Russia with Love and Goldfinger. I mean, there's several of them that end on James and, enter Bond girl's name here, end up on a boat being trailed by, the British Navy or whatever. Like they just always end up on a boat and start making out. So yeah, that's definitely
just so you can have an excuse to get the girl in a bikini.
Basically, yeah. So no, that's well trod upon ground in Bond.
The movie has a weird sequence where they show him taking photos, which I always think is kind of stupid.
Yeah.
And then if you can make it through that, which sometimes I forget, they have the real song from the Ming T band, the BBC, which is an actual that's their actual song.
Yeah, I remember seeing that music video on VH1 all the time.
Oh, okay.
Back in the day. That probably also, come to think of it, might have been one of my first exposures to the movie because I feel like VH1 played the music video leading up to the movie coming out.
Yeah. I don't remember seeing that music video like standalone. I remember seeing it in the credits, but
I didn't even remember it was in the credits the other day. I watched it for the first time, and I stopped it when he started taking his picture because I always find that part kind of dumb because it doesn't really translate into the movie at all.
No, and it goes on too long.
It does.
And I can't figure out, like, is he supposed to be Austin at that time, or is she supposed to, like, it's kind of, the world gets kind of warped for me. But then I let it play all the way through for my second viewing, and I was like, oh, wait, there's a BBC video at the end of this. That's nice. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's Austin Powers, the International Man of Mystery, in a nutshell.
What kind of nut has a shell this large?
I believe there's a hero in all of us.
I just finally know what I have to do.
That keeps us honest.
I'm here to fight for truth and justice in the American way.
Gives us strength.
You will give the people of Earth an ideal to strive towards.
Makes us noble.
And I know in my heart that it's right.
Do you guys have any standout heroic moments in the movie?
Yes, specifically when he will not have sex with Vanessa because she's drunk and can't consent.
Nice. That is a great character moment.
Yeah.
I'm not as confident on what would define this, so I'm sure you'll say whatever I say is fine. But the line I had was when he's telling Dr. Evil, no, we were swingers rebelling against uptight squares like you whose bag was money and world domination. We're innocent, man. If we knew the consequences of our sexual liberation, we would have done things differently, but the spirit would have remained the same. It's freedom, man.
Yeah. No, that's a good moment. Yeah.
I absolutely. Yeah. I like that ethos.
I'll give it to Vanessa showing up with her reinforcements, after he's dealt with the fembots.
And the one guard who's just like looking at him and laughing.
Yeah. He likes what he sees.
Yes.
This planet, these people, they are nothing to me. You were made to be ruled. The universe is power! Pure, unstoppable power!
Come to me, son of Jor-El! Kneel before Zod!
And I am that force! I am that power! In the end, you will always kneel. Kneel before your master!
Let's switch over to most villainous. What are some, or what is the most villainous moment you can think of?
I specifically called out a guy in the very first scene of the movie, like Dr. Evil kills him immediately, but he's got a hook for a hand
Yeah.
and he's holding his cigar like stuck onto the hook.
Yeah.
Never seen that before. That's a great villain iconic
Nice.
image.
Travis, I know.
I'm gonna
You go first. I have to think for another second here.
Okay. I'm gonna call out Austin Powers for running over the security guard with the steamroller. Like, he could have obviously stopped. So
The guy could have gotten out of the way.
yeah.
I'm gonna go with Dr. Evil for liquidating the group. That seemed unnecessary.
Oh,
They seemed
yeah,
like they were
that's
making
good.
they were having a
Yeah.
real breakthrough, him and Scott, and he
They were,
Yeah.
yeah. And the other dads and sons in the group too, could have benefited and grown in their relationships. It seemed like Carrie Fisher was doing the best she could.
Yeah. Well, I guess the last thing to do is to go around and rate this. So, what would you guys give out of 5? What would you give to Austin Powers? And you can explain why you'd give it that rating with some kind of final thoughts, wrap up kind of stuff.
Okay. On the bell curve, I guess you should have a lot more 3s in your life, right? So today I was kind of daydreaming this out, and it's tricky with Marvel releasing so many movies. When people say, "What's your top 10 movies of all time?" I'm like, well, Marvel has 30, so it becomes very difficult. So I was thinking trilogies, and I was thinking, could I think of 9 movies I like better than Austin Powers? And remember, I chose this one. I wasn't just like, "Hey, what are you doing?" Like, I chose Austin Powers for a reason, and I got to think this might be a 5 for me. I think this movie, the few lows are acceptable. The fact that I watched it twice in 2 weeks and I could just turn around right now and watch it all over again, I think that's what a 5 looks like. So I'm going to give it a 5. Just for
Right
me.
on.
So.
Yeah, I'd say I might give it like a 4.5 or a 4.75, just because I reserve 5s for movies that I think are either perfect or are so batshit that they transcend.
Yeah.
But I do genuinely love this movie.
Right
So
on.
yeah, I'd say like a 4.5, 4.75.
Okay.
If you'll allow me the fraction.
Yeah. 4.75. Yeah. I'm for the same reasoning. Yeah, I really like this movie. I'm at a solid 4. I think there are some things that could be tightened up. I think there's some stuff that they'll do in the sequel that improves upon this one. But no, I mean, I watched it twice in the span of 3 days maybe, and enjoyed it both times. I found myself really getting sucked into it in several times and having to pause and go back and write down my notes because I just wanted to kind of keep watching it.
It's very entertaining.
It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially for me, the Dr. Evil stuff. I think what he's doing there is pretty brilliant.
Yeah.
So I'm at a solid 4. So what does that give us? Yeah, 4.58 repeating, whatever. Yeah, it's a fun movie, It's a silly movie. I was worried about talking about a comedy on the show because
it's also a rare 90s comedy that doesn't have any gay panic jokes.
That's true. Yeah.
The looking at our whole discussion today, and yeah, there's a couple times here and there when one of us would say something and I would say, "Oh, these are the parts I don't like as much." There wasn't many parts that I didn't enjoy that at least that one of you guys also didn't enjoy. So even though I'm not a big fan of the fembot scene, you guys were like, "Yeah, I kind of like this for this reason," or I'm like, "I'm not a big fan of this moment." We're like, "Okay, but here's why we needed it." So it's pretty well rounded. There isn't a lot of we're all agreed this should be removed from the movie.
This is unnecessary and brought the movie down. Yeah.
The only time rewatching it, I used the 15-second skip ahead button. Once he hangs up with the UN and he does the extended laugh, where Dr. Evil just starts laughing, cackling with all his henchmen, that goes on too long. I mean, and that's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to go until it's not funny anymore.
And then it starts being funny again.
Yeah.
After it keeps going.
I jumped ahead, 15 seconds there. That's the only thing I think that just it makes me just, ugh. Yeah,
And I
for
watched
some
that
reason I just
scene,
don't like that.
and I was staring at that scene thinking, I wonder who these other people are in real life.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
who did he?
Mhm.
Who are these different men in suits? Like, is one of them his
Yeah.
uncle or his agent, or like who are these? I
Yeah.
want to get to the
Yeah.
credits and know who they are, because why these randos here, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think we've definitely given it a good discussion for Austin
Mhm.
Powers. Why don't we flip it over to you guys and, plug away. Tell the listeners where they can hear more of you, or
Oh, okay. Well, as alluded to before, I have a background in appearing as a guest on a lot of Movies by Minute podcasts. So I've never hosted my own, but I have appeared on a number of friends' podcasts: Titanic Minute, Bat Minute, Mogwai Minute, uh, lots
Did
of
you
other
ever
ones.
were you ever on Austin Powers Minute?
No, I wasn't.
Okay. Huge shout out,
Mhm.
previous guest of the show, friend of the show, Johnny Powers. She
Mhm.
hosts Austin Powers Minute. So I guess for
Or
the
maybe
listeners,
I don't think
definitely.
I was.
I was on the second movie. I didn't make it
I
onto the
don't think
first
so.
one.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's
I've done so many that I've
yeah,
forgotten about.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
kind of terrible.
James.
I want to say that in my research, including Wikipedia and everything else I Googled on YouTube and stuff, that I did find a little piece from on YouTube from Minty Comedic Arts, which had some things about Austin Powers I might not have known about. But
Mhm.
you can only find me right now on one podcast. And as I mentioned at the beginning, it's called Let's Read Spider-Man, available on all platforms except for Pandora, because I don't know what's wrong with Pandora. But and Travis appears in 3 of the episodes, and he's referenced occasionally as our Marvel historian as well. Our podcast is reading the Spider-Man comic books from the beginning. I have a co-host named Eddie. We're reading them basically for the first time, and we react. And as you can tell, I kind of like to do a little bit of voices, and I kind of like to do a little bit of joking, but we do like to be serious and move the storyline forward. And we have a little bit of fun there. We have fake sponsors, which Travis contributed to, again, in episode 72, which he did an amazing
Nice.
job of helping me with a fake sponsor. It kind of blindsided me, and it was really fun, because I'm a very scripted kind of podcast. So doing things off the cuff is tricky for me. So if you think that's something you'd be interested in, go ahead and give it a try. If not, whatever.
It's a fun
I'm
show.
gonna go
Yeah.
plug it to my husband right after this, because he has been doing that, like reading Spider-Man from the beginning over the past couple years.
It's as a listener, as a reader of Spider-Man, yeah, it's a fun podcast to listen to, and even more fun to be on. So
And if your husband actually is like reading an old, 1960 to 1975 comic book, and then he wants to read it and then listen to us right after, our podcast is short. We can do our books take, it's like 8 minutes a book. We're on to the next one. So it's like just read and react. And unlike the 5 stars that we gave to Austin Powers, or 4.5 is 8 as a group today, there's a lot of comic books in Spider-Man that there's a lot of things that we're not going to let you get away with. Like, what are you doing here? And we'll be sure to point that out to you.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, no, thank you both for joining today. I know Alyson, we talked a little bit through Messenger. Like, this was like 2 years in the making. Just when
I
you
agreed to do this
picked
podcast in December of 2019.
Yeah. So
a lifetime ago.
So glad that it you still wanted to do it. And
oh my god, yeah, absolutely.
So no, thanks to both of
and
you.
And I got to do it on my birthday. It was great.
That's right. Happy birthday as of today. I think that's probably going to do it. Next episode, we'll probably do a character review. We don't have too many of those left to do, so we'll probably do one of those next. And the next movie will be The Fifth Element.
Ooh.
Exciting.
Yeah. So maybe Patrick will be done looking for the Supreme Being.
Yeah, hope so.
Next time. And
he's off stealing nuclear warheads for evil purposes.
That's right. I know that's what he gets up to.
Finding some ill-tempered sea bass.
So until then, stay fit. Nope. Until then,
stay groovy, baby.
When the 3 planets are in eclipse, the black hole like a door is open. Evil comes, spreading terror and chaos.
But to exterminate life, all forms of life.
So what you're telling me, Father, there's nothing that can stop.
4 elements gathered around a fifth. The Supreme Being, the ultimate warrior, created to protect life. Then light turns to dark, life to death, forever.
I want your best man to go undercover.
I have the perfect one.
It's nice to see you again, Father. Where are the stones?
I don't know. And even if I did know, I wouldn't tell somebody like you. It's the divine language, the ancient language. Spoken throughout the universe before time was time.
Did you bring me what I asked you for?
Yes.
Evil begets evil, Mr. President.
What is your name?
Illuminale che t'arriva alla minacciare e partecipa.
Good. Major Dallas, you're selected for a mission of the utmost importance. What mission? Save the world.
Go to the Dido, collect the stones, and meet me at the temple.
Send someone to negotiate.
Unbelievable! Everything you create, just destroy.
Do you have any idea where it's heading?
Anybody else want to negotiate?
Where did he learn to negotiate like that?
Very disappointed!
I know my man. He'll calm things down.
It's the best show I ever did.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. Find the show on Facebook and Twitter at Real Comic Heroes. All music and audio are the property of their respective creators.